Alright, so this story is pretty wild, and it's a prime example of how dangerous the internet can actually be, and how seemingly innocent messages between two people can turn into a completely life-changing event. Make sure you watch until the very end of the video though, because the central incident is shocking, but not as shocking as the lies that are later uncovered. And I promise you, you will not be expecting it. Hi, my name's Yasmin and I make videos about things that are scary, disturbing, or just true crime. Every single story I tell is true. I post weekly, so if you'd like to, then please subscribe and give the video a thumbs up, and we will get on with the rest of it. Thomas Montgomery spent about 6 years in the Marines when he was younger, and by the age of 46, he was pretty settled into a monotonous life. He'd pretty much wake up every morning, somehow find the willpower to get dressed for his very, very casual 9-to-5 job where he worked as a factory worker making power tools. He'd come home to his loving wife Cindy and his 2 teenage daughters, have dinner, watch TV, then rinse and repeat the whole process over and over and over again. But one day, things changed, and that was around May 2005. He came home one day and decided to spend some time on the internet. So back then, in 2005, the internet didn't really have a lot to offer. There was an exciting new trend like chat rooms, and in particular one that was really popular was called Pogo. It was like a game and a chat room at the same time. He'd heard a little bit about Pogo, so he thought he'd try and add some interest to his life, so he made an account with the username marinesniper. And he started playing every single night. He began to message all sorts of strangers on Pogo, but one user in particular caught his eye, and her username was talhotblond. Marinesniper and talhotblond would get online every single night and start chatting the night away. Thomas wanted to know more about who talhotblond was, so he started asking a few personal questions like who is she, whereabouts does she live in the country, and it turns out that talhotblond was an 18-year-old girl named Jessi who attended university, and she liked to play softball. And in return, marinesniper, so Thomas, lied about everything, and he also said that he was 18 and that his name was Tommy. So I guess the Tommy part isn't really a lie, but it kind of is, because no one called him Tommy. Every single night, Thomas would rush home and he'd scoff down dinner just to get straight in front of that family computer to chat with talhotblond without Cindy's knowledge at all. Conversations between them started off as pretty friendly back and forth, but quickly became pretty flirtatious and a bit spicy. And within a matter of weeks, Tommy and Jessi were in this full-blown online relationship where they would send intimate emails to each other. They even sent physical letters to each other, like love letters. And sometimes they would even attach photos to these letters. The photos that they'd send to each other would sometimes be a little bit explicit, but sometimes they were just like profile photos of themselves. Now, Tommy, of course, as we know, wasn't 18 years old, so he would trick Jessi by sending a photo from his old photo albums from around like 20 years ago, from when he was actually in the Marines. He'd take a photo of this, print it out, and send it to Jessi. Jessi would just send regular photos of herself, but also throw in a few like spicy photos here and there. Jessi kind of took it a bit far. She actually sent him some used red G-strings. She also made these custom made like dog tag things that she sent Thomas, and Thomas somehow successfully hid it from his wife. Things were escalating so fast though, and the pair had never met each other before. Tommy confessed that he loved Jessi and that he'd never felt this way before about anyone. He proposed to Jessi even though he was still married to Cindy. Tommy's fantasies were running wild at this point, but they were soon about to get crushed. Cindy started to get pretty suspicious about Thomas's excessive sudden internet use on the family computer every single night. It seemed like he just never spoke to his wife anymore, he never really spent any time with his teenage children anymore, and the only thing that really seemed to matter to him was whatever he was doing online every night, which was playing this like pogo chat room game. Cindy was a trusting wife though, and didn't intentionally snoop through anything. So she had no inkling that there was this online relationship that was going on. To Thomas's house, a package arrived in the mail. Cindy saw that it was addressed to her husband, and in 2005, online shopping wasn't really a thing, so who on earth sent this chunky mail to her husband? So she opened up the package and found a physical letter that had been written by Jessi, declaring her love and making it super obvious that she was in a relationship with Tommy. Cindy couldn't wait for her husband to get home and ask him to try and explain or weasel his way out of this. No, her husband had been unfaithful to her, so she was going to do something about it. And what she did was, without telling Thomas, she actually wrote a letter back to Jessi and sent it to her house, just following whatever the return address on the package was. In this letter, she told Jessi that Tommy was a married man, he was not 18 years old, and that he was actually 46 years old, and he had 2 teenage daughters, and he was apparently living this happy life. She even attached evidence of a family photo and sent this to Jessi. This woman, Cindy, must have had some willpower, because I don't think she actually told Thomas what she'd found. Thomas did eventually find out that he'd been caught by his wife, because Jessi messaged him saying that she was so disappointed and disgusted that she'd been speaking to this older man and getting groomed for months on end. And Thomas, on the other hand, was totally gutted. He felt like everything had just been taken away from him. Meanwhile, though, he was always airing his dirty laundry out at work, where he'd talk about his relationship with Jessi when they were in a relationship, and then he started talking about how his wife found out. So basically, everyone in his workplace knew what was going on with Thomas. It wasn't any lie or anything. And that included somebody by the name of Brian Barrett. So Brian Barrett was a 22-year-old university student, and he was actually working in the same place as Thomas, just so he could make ends meet and sort of pay for tuition fees at university as well, while he studied to become a teacher. Thomas had actually mentioned Brian's name to Jessi a little while back in the chat room, saying that they were friends. After all of this wife finding out drama and all the lies that Thomas had told, Jessi thought she shouldn't really be contacting Thomas as much anymore. So instead she started messaging Brian, who was also on Pogo, and he went by the name Beefcake. So they started chatting, and initially, again, it was that back and forth friendly chat. And then slowly they were starting to develop this more romantic sort of online relationship. Thomas got wind of this because Brian would go to work and he would talk about how he was in this online relationship with Jessi. And this made Thomas's blood boil with jealousy. In fact, Brian even made plans to meet up with Jessi in person because he was going to be driving through West Virginia, which is where Jessi lived. Jessi initially agreed, but last minute she cancelled on him. And when Thomas got wind of this, he could not handle it anymore. Thomas ended up sending a really ominous message to talhotblond, saying Brian will pay for this in blood. So on the 15th of September 2006, at around 10 or 10:30 p.m, Brian had just finished his shift at the factory, and he'd actually parked his car in a bit of a secluded area in the big parking lot that they had at work, and he was just walking by himself in the dark to his pickup truck. Little did he know, though, that Thomas was there secretly following him to his car. He was wearing camo gear and a ski mask pulled over his face, plus it was nighttime, so Brian wouldn't have been able to see Thomas at all really approaching him. Brian unlocked his car, opened up the driver's seat, and he was just about to get inside when Thomas appeared out of nowhere and shot him 3 times at close range in the neck and the left arm. Brian was left for dead for 2 days until a co-worker saw his pickup truck, and they got a little bit closer and they saw that Brian was deceased. So this is around when things start to take a really weird and unexpected turn. The first people that police contacted were Brian's co-workers because this incident happened at work, so they may have had some idea of who had done it. That's when all of them told the police about this dirty online love triangle that involved Jessi, Thomas, and Brian. Next in line to be questioned was Thomas. Police went knocking at his door where his wife, Cindy, answered. And she said that Thomas wasn't actually at home. In fact, nobody knew where he was at this point. I think he'd fled or something. So they ended up questioning Cindy instead, who actually ended up saying Thomas wasn't at home that night, especially at the time that Brian got killed. He just didn't have an alibi. When she was questioned about Jessi, she let them know about the online cheating saga and the whole pogo thing. So police got permission to actually search on the family computer just what was happening, and it revealed all their conversations between Jessi and Thomas. And they were actually starting to get a little bit concerned about Jessi's life because Thomas's message that he last sent her was so ominous. Police thought it would probably be the best to go directly over to Jessi's house just to make sure that she's okay, but also to ask about Brian's murder because she probably knows something about it. Meanwhile, Thomas was found and he was arrested for the murder of Brian. And he was arrested because they could actually see that his cell phone pinged around the area that Brian was killed around the time that he was killed as well. And he had a motive to kill him, so it was pretty obvious. At around 6 to 6:30 that afternoon, the police arrived at Jessi's home, and when they knocked on the door, a woman in her 40s answered the door. But this wasn't Jessi, it was someone named Mary. The police asked if Jessi was at home and whether they could come inside and speak to Jessi. As soon as they mentioned this to Mary, she burst into tears because she knew exactly what was happening. Mary was happily married to somebody called Tim, and she was 45 years old with 2 children, and she had recently made a pogo account with the username talhotblond. She was pretending to be a hot 18-year-old girl by the name of Jessi, who was actually her daughter's identity that she had stolen. Mary had stolen her own daughter's identity to trick Tommy and Brian online into getting some sort of romantic attention. What's more sickening is that the fact that Mary never told her daughter about any of this, all the photos she sent, all the intimate ones and all the casual ones, every single one of them was secretly taken, which is incredibly disturbing and a breach of Jessi's privacy. How could your own mother do this to you? Especially because your mum is the person who wants to protect you from online predators, so why would she showcase you online? Mary never got in trouble for any of this though. She didn't get arrested and was never blamed for playing any role in Brian's murder. This case was a pretty huge scandal at the time, and it was all over the local news, but Mary's daughter only found out about the fact that her mum was using her identity through news reports. She didn't even tell her daughter or apologize about it because she thought that she did nothing wrong. Prior to this, Mary and Jessi actually had a very special mother-daughter bond and relationship, but following this whole incident, Jessi ceased all contact with her crazy mum. Mary's husband, Tim, ended up getting a divorce. Meanwhile, Thomas will be in prison for 20 years, and of course, his wife also divorced him while he was in prison. Surely there's a screw loose in Mary's head. She said the only reason why she pretended to be a good-looking 18-year-old girl on this website was to prevent people like Tom, predators like Tom, from preying on other young and vulnerable women online, which is a really bad excuse. And that actually concludes this case. It's insane to me that the person who actually had a kind heart and told the truth the entire time was unfortunately the one who lost his life. If you found this interesting, then please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. I post every single week, so I will see you in the next video. Bye.